It was December 2nd, 2026 at 2:47 a.m. when a dream so vivid, so terrifying, so undeniably divine drove me to the desert oasis 30 miles outside of Tucson, and there, surrounded by ancient palm trees that swayed like worshippers in the pre-dawn darkness, their fronds whispering secrets older than time itself, their shadows dancing across a reflecting pool so still it looked like polished obsidian under the crescent moon, Jesus appeared with tears streaming down his face and revealed that what's coming this January 2026 will separate the true believers from the pretenders, and that most of the church, most of those who call themselves Christians, will miss it entirely. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it, but you've been marked. I need you to do something right now before we go any further. I need you to type your prayer request in the comments. I don't care how long it is. I don't care how impossible it seems. Type it out. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't for the casual scroller. It's not for the Sunday morning only Christian. It's for the marked ones, the chosen ones, the ones who know, deep in their spirit, that something is shifting. And if you're truly serious about what God is doing right now, hit that subscribe button. I know, everyone asks you to subscribe. But here's the difference. I'm not building a platform. I'm not trying to become famous. I spent years portraying Jesus in The Chosen, looking into his eyes scene after scene, studying his mannerisms, his heart, his passion for his people, and something happened to me during those years. Something broke open inside me, a sensitivity, a frequency. And now, at 51 years old, single with no children to distract me, no family obligations pulling at my attention, I've become a vessel for something I never asked for and certainly don't deserve. The temperature that morning was 43 degrees. I remember because I was shaking, though I don't think it was entirely from the cold. I'd driven through the darkness in my Jeep, guided by something I can't explain, down a dirt road I'd never taken before, until I found this place, a hidden oasis that shouldn't exist in the Sonoran Desert. The reflecting pool, maybe 40 feet across, was fed by an underground spring that bubbled up through limestone rocks worn smooth by centuries of water. 7 palm trees, I counted them, formed a semicircle around the northern edge of the pool, their trunks thick and scarred, survivors of countless desert storms. The air smelled of creosote and wet stone, that distinctive desert after-dark scent that's both ancient and alive. Above me, the stars were so bright, so numerous, they looked like someone had shattered diamonds across black velvet. The Milky Way stretched overhead like a river of light, and I remember thinking how small I was, how insignificant, standing there in my jeans and hoodie, my breath forming small clouds in the cold air. I didn't know why I was there. The dream had been... I can't even describe it. I'd seen crowds of people, millions of them, walking past churches, walking past Bibles, walking past every opportunity to hear God's voice, and they were all staring at their phones, at their screens, hypnotized, deaf, blind. And in the dream, I heard a voice, his voice, saying, "January, tell them about January, tell them I'm speaking," but they've forgotten how to listen. So there I stood at 2:47 in the morning, beside a pool of water so still it perfectly mirrored the stars, and I said out loud, "Jesus, I'm here. I don't know why, but I'm here." The wind stopped. I mean, completely stopped. The palm fronds, which had been rustling constantly, went silent. The small ripples on the pool's surface smoothed out entirely. Even the sound of the distant highway disappeared. It was as if someone had pressed a mute button on the entire desert. And then I saw him. He didn't appear in a flash of light or a burning bush. He was simply there, standing on the opposite side of the pool, his reflection visible in the water before I even looked up to see him standing on the shore. He was wearing a simple robe, cream-colored, and his feet were bare on the smooth stones. His hair moved slightly in a breeze I couldn't feel, and his eyes, oh God, his eyes, were filled with such sorrow, such deep, aching sorrow, that I felt my knees buckle. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice was like water over stones, like wind through canyons, like everything beautiful and terrible all at once. "Do you know why you're here?" I couldn't speak. I literally couldn't form words. I just shook my head. He walked around the pool toward me, his bare feet making no sound on the rocks, and as he approached, I noticed the temperature rising, not dramatically, but noticeably. The cold that had been biting at my face and hands began to fade, replaced by a warmth that seemed to emanate from him like invisible light. "You're here because January is coming," he said, stopping about 10 feet from me. "And my people, my bride, is asleep. They're not just asleep, Jonathan. They're in a coma. and I need you to be an alarm clock." "I don't understand," I managed to whisper. He gestured to the pool, and suddenly the still water began to move, not with ripples, but with images. I saw churches, thousands of them, with people filing in and out, going through motions, singing songs, raising hands, but their hearts were somewhere else. Their minds were on their problems, their bills, their relationships, their entertainment, their comfort. "They think they're listening to me," Jesus said, his voice breaking slightly. "They think because they attend a service, because they read a devotional on their phone, because they say grace before dinner, that they're connected to me. But Jonathan, I'm speaking, I'm shouting, and they can't hear me because they've filled their lives with so much noise." The images in the water shifted. I saw people in their homes, Bibles on their shelves collecting dust. I saw people in their cars, driving to church while arguing with their spouses. I saw people in prayer meetings, saying words they didn't mean, performing spirituality like actors in a play. "This January," he continued, and now his voice carried an edge of urgency that made my chest tighten, "I'm going to speak. I'm going to move. I'm going to pour out warnings and wisdom and direction like never before. But here's what breaks my heart, Jonathan. Here's what keeps me weeping in the night hours. Most of them will miss it. Most of them will be so distracted, so comfortable in their religious routines, so deafened by the noise of their lives that they'll miss the most important moment of their generation." A shooting star streaked across the sky above us, and in that moment the palm trees began to sway again, though I still felt no wind. It was as if they were responding to his presence, bowing, worshiping. "What do you want me to tell them?" I asked, my voice shaking. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the tears on his cheeks catching the starlight. "Tell them that January 2026 is a threshold. Tell them that I'm going to speak to every single person who truly seeks me, not with their lips, but with their whole heart. Tell them that I'm going to give warnings about what's coming, direction for their families, revelation about their purpose, clarity about their calling, but—" He paused, and the sorrow in his eyes deepened. "Tell them that if they ignore me, if they're too busy, too distracted, too comfortable to listen, they're going to miss their moment. And some moments don't come twice." The water in the pool began to glow, a soft blue-white light emanating from its depths, and in that light I saw specific images. I saw a woman, I don't know who she was, sitting in her living room, feeling a strong urge to pray, to seek God's face, but instead, she picked up her phone and scrolled through social media for 2 hours. And in the vision, I saw what she missed, a warning about a decision her daughter was about to make, a decision that would alter the course of her family's life. "She felt me calling," Jesus said softly. "She felt the pull, but she chose distraction over devotion." The image shifted. I saw a man in his office, successful, respected in his church, a deacon or elder of some kind. He felt a stirring in his spirit during the first week of January, a call to fast and pray, to seek God's face about the direction of his business. But he was too busy. He had meetings, obligations, responsibilities. And in the vision, I watched as he made a business decision in March that looked good on paper, but led to devastating consequences by summer. Consequences that could have been avoided if he'd listened in January. "He knew I was speaking," Jesus said, and now his voice carried not just sorrow but frustration. "He's been a Christian for 30 years. He knows my voice. But he's become so accustomed to running his own life, so confident in his own wisdom, that he treated my warning like a suggestion, like an option." I felt tears streaming down my own face now. "Jesus, why me? Why are you showing me this? I'm nobody. I'm just an actor who played you in a show. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a prophet. I'm not—" "You're marked," he interrupted, and his hand reached out and touched my chest, right over my heart. The warmth that had been surrounding us suddenly intensified, flooding through my body like liquid fire, not painful but overwhelming, and I fell to my knees on the smooth stones beside the pool. "You're marked because you've learned to listen," he continued, his hand still on my chest. "You've spent years studying me, watching me, trying to understand my heart. And in that process, something happened. You became sensitive, you became tuned to my frequency, and now I need you to sound the alarm." The glowing water showed me another image, a young couple, newly married, feeling called to make a radical change in January, to leave their comfortable jobs and pursue ministry. They felt it so strongly, but fear won, practicality won, the voices of well-meaning family members won, and I watched as they settled into a life of comfort and regret, always wondering what might have been, always feeling that nagging sense that they'd missed their moment. "Do you see?" Jesus asked, his voice urgent now. "Do you see what's at stake? I'm not talking about salvation. I'm not talking about heaven or hell. I'm talking about destiny. I'm talking about purpose. I'm talking about the specific, unique, irreplaceable calling that I've placed on each of my children. And January 2026 is when I'm going to speak clearly, directly, specifically to anyone who will truly listen. But most won't. Most will be too distracted, too busy, too comfortable, too afraid." The sky was beginning to lighten in the east, the stars fading as the first hints of dawn approached. The palm trees were now clearly visible, their fronds golden green in the pre-dawn light. The pool's glow faded, returning to its natural state, reflecting the gradually brightening sky. "Come back tomorrow night," Jesus said, stepping back from me. "Same time, same place. There's more you need to see. There's more you need to understand, because this isn't just about January. This is about what happens to those who ignore me. This is about consequences. This is about the difference between a life lived in my will and a life lived in comfortable Christianity." "I'll be here," I said immediately. "I promise, I'll be here." He smiled then, but it was a sad smile, the smile of someone who knows that most people won't listen, won't change, won't respond. "I know you will, Jonathan. You're marked. You're chosen for this. But remember, this message isn't for everyone. It's only for those who have ears to hear. It's only for those who are desperate enough, hungry enough, serious enough to actually respond." And then he was gone. Not gradually, not with fanfare, just gone. And I was alone beside the pool as the sun began to rise over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold, the palm trees casting long shadows across the water. I sat there for another hour, shaking, weeping, trying to process what I'd just experienced. The temperature rose as the sun climbed higher, the desert coming alive with the sounds of birds and insects. But all I could think about was what he'd shown me. All I could feel was the urgency in his voice. All I could see were those images of people missing their moment, ignoring his voice, choosing comfort over calling. Listen to me. If you're still reading this, if you've made it this far, you're marked. You're supposed to see this message, and I need you to take this seriously. I need you to understand that what I'm sharing isn't theory. It's not metaphor. It's not some nice spiritual concept to make you feel good. Jesus is going to speak this January 2026, clearly, directly, specifically, to you, about your life, about your family, about your calling, about decisions you need to make, about directions you need to take, about warnings you need to heed. But here's the question. Will you be listening? Will you be paying attention? Or will you be too distracted, too busy, too comfortable, too afraid to hear him? Tomorrow night, I'm going back to that oasis. Jesus told me there's more I need to see, more I need to understand, more I need to share with you. And I promise you, if what he showed me tonight shook me to my core, I can't imagine what tomorrow will bring. Type, "I'm listening" in the comments if you're serious about this. If you're committed to not missing what God is saying this January, because this isn't a game, this isn't entertainment, this is your life, your destiny, your purpose, and the clock is ticking. I barely slept that day. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, those tear-filled eyes, that expression of divine sorrow mixed with holy frustration. I spent December 2nd in a daze, going through the motions of my day while my spirit was still standing beside that reflecting pool, still feeling the warmth of his hand on my chest, still hearing his voice echo through my mind. January is coming, and my people are asleep. I tried to tell a few people what had happened, a friend from church, my agent, even my neighbor, but the words came out wrong, sounding crazy, even to my own ears. Jesus appeared to me in the desert and told me to warn everyone about January. Yeah, that goes over real well in casual conversation, so I stopped trying to explain and just waited for 2:47 a.m. to come again. At 2:15 a.m. on December 3rd, I was already in my Jeep, driving through the darkness toward the oasis. The temperature had dropped to 39 degrees and a wind had picked up from the west, carrying the scent of distant rain. The desert sky was different tonight. Clouds obscured about half the stars, creating a patchwork of light and shadow that moved across the landscape like living things. I arrived at 2:35, giving myself time to prepare, though I had no idea how to prepare for an encounter with the living God. The oasis looked different in the pre-storm darkness. The palm trees were bending and swaying in the wind, their fronds creating a rushing sound like ocean waves. The reflecting pool was no longer still. Small ripples crossed its surface, distorting the reflected clouds and stars into abstract patterns. I stood in the same spot as the night before, my hands shoved into my jacket pockets, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The wind was cold, biting, pushing against me like it was trying to drive me away. The smell of creosote was stronger tonight, mixed with the electric scent that comes before a desert storm. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the wind stopped again. Just like before, the sudden silence was deafening. The palm trees froze mid-sway, the ripples on the pool smoothed out instantly. Even the distant sound of thunder that had been rumbling on the horizon went quiet, and he was there. This time he was standing right beside me, so close I could have reached out and touched him. I gasped and stumbled backward, my foot slipping on the smooth stones, but his hand shot out and caught my arm, steadying me. His grip was firm, real, warm, more real than anything I'd ever felt. "Don't be afraid," he said, but his voice was different tonight, harder, more urgent. The gentleness from the previous night was still there, but underneath it was something else, a holy anger, a righteous frustration that made the air around us feel charged, electric. "I'm not afraid," I lied, and he smiled slightly, sadly, seeing right through me. "You should be," he said, releasing my arm. "Not of me, but of what I'm about to show you. Not everyone who hears a warning heeds it, Jonathan. Not everyone who sees the storm coming takes shelter, and the consequences are what I need you to understand tonight." He walked to the edge of the pool, and I followed, my legs shaking. The water was perfectly still now, like glass, like a mirror, like a window into another world. He knelt down and touched the surface with his fingertips, and the water began to glow again, that same blue-white light from the night before, but brighter, more intense. "Last night I showed you people who will miss my voice in January," he said, his eyes fixed on the glowing water. "Tonight I'm going to show you what happens after. I'm going to show you the cost of ignoring God." The water rippled outward from where his fingers touched it, and images began to form. But these weren't gentle visions. These were harsh, painful, devastating. I saw the woman from the night before, the one who had chosen her phone over prayer. The image showed her 6 months later in July 2026, sitting in a hospital waiting room, her face buried in her hands, sobbing. Her daughter, the one she could have prayed for, the one she could have received warning about, had made a decision that led to a car accident, not fatal, but life-altering. And in the vision, I could hear the woman's thoughts, her anguished internal voice. I felt God trying to tell me something in January. Why didn't I listen? Why didn't I pray? "She felt me," Jesus said, his voice tight with emotion. "She knew I was calling her to intercede for her daughter. She knew it, but she chose comfort over obedience. She chose distraction over devotion. And now her daughter will live with the consequences of a decision that could have been prevented." The image shifted, and I saw the businessman from the night before, the deacon, the respected church leader. It was August 2026, and he was sitting in a lawyer's office signing bankruptcy papers. His business had collapsed, his reputation was destroyed, his family was fractured, and in the vision, I heard him say to his wife, "I felt God warning me. Back in January, I felt him so clearly, but I thought I knew better. I thought my experience, my wisdom was enough." Tears were streaming down my face now, hot against my cold cheeks. "Jesus, this is too much. This is reality," he interrupted, his voice sharp. "This is what happens when my people treat my voice like background noise. This is what happens when they're so comfortable in their Christianity that they forget I'm a living God who speaks, who warns, who directs, who protects." The wind suddenly returned, but it wasn't natural. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once, warm and cold simultaneously, swirling around us, making the palm trees bend and groan. The clouds above us began to move faster, creating a vortex effect, and lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating the desert in brief, stark moments of clarity. "Do you know what breaks my heart most?" Jesus asked, standing up from the pool, turning to face me. His eyes were blazing now, not with anger at me, but with a passionate intensity that made me want to fall on my face. "It's not the unbelievers, it's not the atheists, it's not the people who openly reject me. It's my own people, my bride, who have become so lukewarm, so comfortable, so distracted, that they can't hear me anymore even when I'm shouting." He gestured to the pool, and new images appeared. I saw churches, hundreds of them, thousands of them, filled with people who looked spiritual, who raised their hands during worship, who said "Amen" at the right times, who posted Bible verses on social media. But their hearts were far from him. Their minds were on everything but him. Their lives were built on comfort and convenience rather than surrender and sacrifice. They think they're fine, Jesus said, his voice rising above the wind. They think because they attend church, because they give their tithes, because they avoid the big sins, that they're walking with me. But Jonathan, you can do all those things and still be deaf to my voice. You can look like a Christian, act like a Christian, talk like a Christian, and still miss me entirely. Thunder cracked directly overhead, so loud I felt it in my chest. The lightning was closer now, striking somewhere in the desert beyond the oasis, illuminating the landscape in brilliant white flashes. But I wasn't afraid of the storm. I was afraid of what he was showing me. The images in the pool shifted again, and this time I saw the young couple from the night before, the ones who had felt called to leave their jobs and pursue ministry. It was December 2026, exactly 1 year from now, and they were sitting in their comfortable home, surrounded by nice things, living a nice life. But there was a deadness in their eyes, a resignation, a quiet desperation. They'd chosen security over calling, and now they were trapped in a life that looked successful but felt empty. They'll live, Jesus said quietly, the anger in his voice giving way to sorrow again. They'll be fine by the world's standards. They'll have their comfort, their security, their nice house and nice cars. But they'll spend the rest of their lives wondering what could have been. They'll lie awake at night, feeling that ache in their spirit, that nagging sense that they missed something. And they did. They missed me. They missed their purpose. They missed the adventure I had planned for them. I fell to my knees on the stones, my hands gripping the edge of the pool, staring at the images in the water. How do we stop this? I asked desperately. How do we wake people up? He knelt beside me, his hand on my shoulder, and the warmth that radiated from his touch drove away the cold wind. That's why you're here, Jonathan. That's why I've marked you. Someone has to sound the alarm. Someone has to tell them that January 2026 is a threshold moment. Someone has to warn them that I'm going to speak, and if they miss it, there will be consequences. The water showed me more images, rapid fire now, like a montage. A pastor who felt called to change the direction of his church in January, but chose to maintain the status quo, and by year's end, his congregation had become a social club rather than a house of prayer. A mother who felt prompted to have a specific conversation with her son in January, but put it off, and by spring he'd walked away from his faith entirely. A businessman who felt led to make a radical act of generosity in January, but talked himself out of it, and by fall his heart had hardened toward God's voice entirely. Do you see the pattern? Jesus asked. Do you see what happens? It's not that I punish them for not listening. It's that ignoring my voice has natural consequences. When you ignore a warning, you walk into danger. When you ignore direction, you wander off the path. When you ignore a call, you miss your destiny. Another lightning strike, closer this time, and in its flash, I saw something that made my blood run cold. In the pool's reflection, I saw myself, older, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, sitting alone in a dark room, filled with regret, and I heard my own voice, older and broken. He told me to warn them. He showed me what was coming. But I was afraid. I was afraid they'd think I was crazy. So I stayed silent. And they missed it. No, I said out loud, my voice cracking. No, I won't let that happen. I'll tell them. I don't care if they think I'm crazy. I don't care if they mock me or dismiss me. I'll tell them. Jesus' hand tightened on my shoulder. Good, because this isn't about you, Jonathan. This isn't about your reputation or your comfort or your fear. This is about my people. This is about my bride, and she's asleep, and January is coming, and someone needs to be an alarm clock. The storm was directly overhead now, the wind whipping around us, the palm trees bending almost horizontal, the pool's surface churning with waves. But we were in a bubble of calm, a circle of peace in the middle of chaos. His presence created a sanctuary, a shelter, even as the desert raged around us. Let me show you one more thing, he said, and his voice was gentle again, tender. Let me show you what happens when someone does listen, when someone does respond, when someone takes my warning seriously. The water calmed despite the storm, and I saw a different kind of image, a man, middle-aged, ordinary-looking, sitting in his living room in early January 2026. He felt a strong prompting to pray, to seek God's face, to fast for 3 days, and unlike the others, he obeyed. He cleared his schedule. He turned off his phone. He got alone with God. And in those 3 days, he received clear direction about a major decision he needed to make. He received warning about a situation at his workplace. He received revelation about his marriage that saved it from disaster. This is what's possible, Jesus said, and there was hope in his voice now, joy even. This is what I want for all of them, clear direction, divine protection, supernatural wisdom, but it requires one thing, listening, actually listening, not just hearing, but responding. The image shifted, showing the same man 6 months later. His life wasn't perfect, he still faced challenges, still had struggles, but there was a peace about him, a confidence, a sense of walking in divine alignment. He'd heard God's voice in January, he'd obeyed, and now he was reaping the benefits. I want to give this to everyone, Jesus said, standing up, pulling me to my feet with him. I want to speak to every single person who calls themselves mine. I want to give warnings, direction, wisdom, revelation, but I can't force them to listen. I can't make them prioritize me over their comfort. I can't compel them to turn off the noise and actually seek my face. The storm began to subside, the wind dying down, the lightning moving off into the distance. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east again, dawn approaching, the clouds breaking apart to reveal the stars beyond. Tomorrow night, Jesus said, I'm going to show you the final piece. I'm going to show you what's coming, not just for individuals, but for the church, for the nation, for the world. I'm going to show you why January 2026 is so critical, why this warning is so urgent. And then, Jonathan, you're going to have a choice to make. You're going to have to decide if you're willing to be my messenger, even if it costs you everything. I'm willing, I said immediately. Whatever it takes, I'm willing. He smiled, and this time it was a real smile, warm and approving. I know you are, that's why I chose you, that's why you're marked. But knowing you're willing and actually paying the price are two different things. Tomorrow night you'll understand what I mean. He began to fade, becoming translucent, the dawn light shining through him. One more thing, he said, his voice echoing as he disappeared. Tell them this. January 2026 is not about fear. It's about opportunity. It's not about judgment. It's about direction. I'm not trying to scare them. I'm trying to save them from wasted years, from missed opportunities, from the devastating consequences of ignoring my voice. Tell them that. And then he was gone, and I was alone beside the pool as the sun rose over the desert, the storm clouds breaking apart, golden light flooding across the landscape, the palm trees dripping with rain I hadn't noticed falling, the pool's surface steaming slightly in the cold morning air. I sat down on the stones, exhausted, overwhelmed, my mind racing with everything I'd seen. The woman and her daughter, the businessman and his bankruptcy, the couple and their empty comfort, the pastor and his dying church, and then the man who had listened, who had obeyed, who had reaped the benefits of taking God's voice seriously. Listen to me. Are you understanding what I'm telling you? This isn't some vague spiritual concept. This isn't some nice sermon illustration. This is real. This is your life. This is your future. Jesus is going to speak this January 2026 to you, specifically, clearly, about your life, your family, your calling, your decisions. He's going to give you warnings, direction, wisdom, revelation. But here's the question that will determine the trajectory of your entire year, maybe your entire life. Will you listen? Will you actually respond? Or will you be too busy, too distracted, too comfortable to hear him? I've seen what happens when people ignore him. I've seen the consequences, the regret, the devastation, the wasted years, the missed opportunities. And I'm telling you, as someone who has looked into his eyes and seen his tears, as someone who has felt his hand on my shoulder and heard the urgency in his voice, you cannot afford to miss this. Type "I won't miss it" in the comments if you're serious. If you're committed to making January 2026 a month of seeking God's face like never before. Because tomorrow night I'm going back to that oasis one more time, and what he's going to show me then, I can feel it in my spirit. It's going to change everything. The clock is ticking, January is coming, and you need to be ready. I didn't go home after the second encounter. I couldn't. Something in my spirit told me that if I left the desert, if I returned to the noise and distraction of normal life, I'd lose the clarity, the sensitivity, the frequency I'd been tuned to. So I spent December 3rd in my Jeep, parked at the oasis, watching the sun move across the sky, praying, weeping, preparing for what I knew would be the most intense encounter yet. The day was unusually warm for December, reaching 68 degrees by mid-afternoon, and the storm from the early morning had left everything washed clean, the colors of the desert more vivid than I'd ever seen them. The palm trees looked greener, their fronds still dripping occasionally. The reflecting pool was crystal clear, and I could see all the way to the bottom, maybe 15 feet down, where smooth stones and ancient tree roots created patterns that looked almost intentional, almost designed. I spent the day reading my Bible, specifically the passages about God's warnings throughout history. Noah and the flood, 120 years of warning that almost everyone ignored. Lot and Sodom, angels literally pulling him out of the city while he hesitated. Jonah and Nineveh, a city that actually listened and was spared. The prophets crying out to Israel, decades of warnings that fell on deaf ears until judgment finally came. The pattern was clear, terrifying, undeniable. God warns before he acts. He speaks before he moves. He gives his people opportunity after opportunity to hear, to respond, to align themselves with his will. But most don't listen. Most are too comfortable, too distracted, too convinced they have time. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple and deep red, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. The temperature dropped rapidly from 68 degrees at 5 p.m. to 41 degrees by 8 p.m. A different kind of wind picked up, not the violent storm wind from the night before, but a steady, cold wind from the north that carried the scent of sage and juniper from the higher elevations. I built a small fire from dead palm fronds and mesquite branches I found scattered around the oasis, not for warmth, though I needed it, but because I felt prompted to. Something about the fire felt right, felt biblical, felt like I was creating an altar in the wilderness. At midnight, I was sitting beside the fire, watching the flames dance and flicker, casting moving shadows across the palm trees in the pool. The stars were out in full force tonight. No clouds, no moon yet, just an endless canopy of light that made me feel simultaneously insignificant and deeply seen. At 1 a.m., I felt him before I saw him. The air became thick, heavy, charged with a presence so powerful that my chest tightened and my breathing became shallow. The fire, which had been burning steadily, suddenly flared up, the flames reaching 10 feet high, turning from orange to blue-white, the same color as the glowing pool from the previous nights, and he walked out of the fire, not through it, not around it, out of it, like the fire was a doorway, a portal, a thin place between heaven and earth. He was wearing the same cream-colored robe, but tonight there was something different about him. His face was set like flint. His eyes were blazing with holy fire. His presence was so intense, so overwhelming, that I fell face down on the ground, my forehead pressing against the cold stones, unable to look at him directly. "Stand up, Jonathan," he said, and his voice was like thunder, like an earthquake, like the sound of many waters. "What I'm about to show you requires you to stand, requires you to be strong, requires you to be willing to see what most refuse to look at." I struggled to my feet, my legs shaking so badly I could barely stand. The fire behind him was still burning with that supernatural blue-white flame, and the heat from it was intense, driving away the cold desert night. "For 2 nights I've shown you individuals," he said, walking toward the pool, his bare feet leaving glowing footprints on the stones that faded after a few seconds. "Tonight, I'm going to show you the bigger picture. Tonight, I'm going to show you what's coming, not just for individuals, but for the church, for this nation, for the world. And I'm going to show you why January 2026 is the last clear warning before everything shifts." He knelt at the edge of the pool, and this time when he touched the water, the entire surface erupted with light, not just glowing, but blazing, like the pool had become liquid fire. The light shot upward in a column, reaching maybe 50 feet into the air, and in that column of light I saw images, visions, revelations that made my knees buckle again. I saw the American church, not individual congregations, but the church as a whole, and it was divided, fractured, more concerned with politics than prayer, more focused on culture wars than spiritual warfare, more interested in being relevant than being righteous. And I heard Jesus weeping, his voice breaking. "This is not what I died for. This is not my bride. This is not my body." The image shifted, and I saw what was coming in 2026 and beyond. I saw economic shaking, not complete collapse, but significant instability that would force people to choose between trusting God and trusting their own resources. I saw political chaos, not the end of democracy, but such division and confusion that people wouldn't know what to believe or who to trust. I saw natural disasters, fires, floods, earthquakes, increasing in frequency and intensity, not as punishment, but as birth pangs, as signs, as warnings that time is short. "January 2026, Jesus said, his voice cutting through my shock, is when I'm going to speak clearly to my people about how to navigate what's coming. I'm going to give specific instructions, specific warnings, specific directions. Some I'll tell to move, some I'll tell to stay, some I'll tell to prepare, some I'll tell to give everything away, some I'll tell to speak up, some I'll tell to be silent. but every single person who truly seeks my face in January will receive clear, specific, personal direction for what's ahead. The column of light shifted, showing me churches, thousands of them, in January 2026. Some were filled with people who were genuinely seeking God, fasting, praying, desperate for His voice, and I watched as He poured out wisdom, revelation, direction, protection over them. I saw families receiving warnings that saved them from disaster. I saw businesses receiving strategies that allowed them to thrive in chaos. I saw individuals receiving clarity about their calling that launched them into their destiny. But then the image shifted to other churches, far more of them, where January 2026 looked like every other month. Services as usual, programs as usual, comfortable Christianity as usual, people going through the motions, singing the songs, saying the prayers, but their hearts far from Him, their ears deaf to His voice, their lives unchanged. "Watch what happens," Jesus said, and His voice was filled with such sorrow that I started weeping again. The vision fast-forwarded through 2026, and I watched as the two groups, those who had listened in January and those who hadn't, experienced radically different years. Those who had heard His voice and obeyed were still facing challenges, still experiencing difficulties, but they were navigating them with supernatural wisdom, divine protection, and a peace that made no natural sense. They were in the storm, but they were anchored. Those who had ignored Him, who had been too busy or too distracted or too comfortable to seek His face in January, were being tossed around by every wind, every crisis, every challenge. They were panicking, scrambling, making decision after decision based on fear rather than faith, on human wisdom rather than divine direction, and with each wrong decision they drifted further from their purpose, further from their calling, further from Him. "This is what breaks my heart," Jesus said, standing up from the pool, the column of light still blazing behind Him. "It's not that I want them to suffer. It's not that I'm withholding my help. It's that they won't listen. They won't seek me. They're so comfortable in their lukewarm Christianity that they don't think they need me. Not really, not desperately, not with their whole heart." He turned to face me, and the intensity in His eyes was almost unbearable. "Do you know what Revelation 3:16 says? Because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth." Do you know why lukewarm is worse than cold? Because cold people know they need fire. Lukewarm people think they're fine. They think they're spiritual. They think they're walking with me, but they're not. They're walking with a version of me they've created, a comfortable Jesus, a convenient Jesus, a Jesus who doesn't require anything of them. The fire behind Him suddenly exploded outward, the flames spreading across the ground in a circle around us, but not burning anything, not consuming the palm trees or the grass or even the dead branches scattered around. It was like the fire from the burning bush, present, powerful, but not destructive. "January 2026 is my last clear warning before the shaking intensifies," He said, His voice rising above the roar of the supernatural flames. "I'm going to speak. I'm going to move. I'm going to pour out my Spirit on anyone who truly seeks me. But after January, the noise is going to get louder. The distractions are going to multiply. The chaos is going to increase. And those who haven't learned to hear my voice, those who haven't prioritized seeking my face, are going to be swept away by it all." The column of light from the pool shifted again, and this time I saw something that made me cry out in anguish. I saw people I knew, friends, family members, fellow actors, people from my church, and they were all going through the motions of Christianity, but they were deaf to His voice. I watched as January 2026 came and went, and they missed it. They missed Him. They were too busy with their jobs, their hobbies, their entertainment, their comfortable routines. And I watched as the year unfolded and they faced crisis after crisis, making wrong decision after wrong decision, drifting further and further from their purpose. "No," I said, my voice breaking. "Please, no, not them. They're good people. They love you. Do they?" He interrupted, and his voice was sharp, cutting. "Do they really love me, Jonathan? Or do they love the idea of me? Do they love the comfort I provide? Do they love the blessings I give? Do they love the identity of being a Christian? Because loving me, truly loving me, means listening to me. It means obeying me. It means prioritizing me above everything else. And most of them don't. Most of them have made me an accessory to their life rather than the Lord of their life." The flames around us grew higher, and the heat was intense now, driving away every bit of cold, making me sweat despite the December night. The palm trees were silhouetted against the fire, looking like they were bowing, worshiping, responding to His presence. "I'm going to give you a specific message," He said, stepping closer to me, so close I could feel the power radiating from Him like waves. I want you to tell them this exactly. In January 2026, set aside 30 minutes every single day, not for devotions, not for Bible reading, not for worship music, but for listening. Sit in silence, turn off your phone, eliminate every distraction, and ask me 3 questions. What do you want to tell me? What do you want to warn me about? What do you want me to do? He paused, making sure I was absorbing every word. Tell them that if they'll do this, if they'll truly seek my face with desperation and sincerity, I will speak. I will give them specific direction for their life. I will warn them about dangers ahead. I will show them opportunities they would have missed. I will reveal their calling with clarity they've never experienced. But, his voice hardened, if they ignore this, if they're too busy, if they treat this like just another nice spiritual suggestion, they will miss the most important moment of their generation. The column of light from the pool suddenly shot higher, reaching maybe 100 feet into the air, and at the top it exploded like fireworks, showering down golden light that fell like rain but disappeared before it hit the ground. And in that moment, I saw the scope of what he was saying. I saw millions of people, his bride, standing at a crossroads. One path led to divine alignment, supernatural wisdom, and purposeful living. The other path led to wasted years, missed opportunities, and the devastating regret of ignoring God's voice. The consequences of ignoring me are not immediate, he said, his voice softer now, but no less intense. That's what makes it so dangerous. People can ignore my voice in January and still go to church in February. They can miss my warning and still post Bible verses in March. They can reject my direction and still feel spiritual in April. But by December 2026, the gap between those who listened and those who didn't will be undeniable. And by December 2027, it will be devastating. He reached out and placed both hands on my shoulders, and the power that flowed through his touch was almost more than I could bear. My whole body felt like it was vibrating, like every cell was being charged with divine electricity. You're going to face opposition, he said, looking directly into my eyes. People are going to call you crazy. They're going to say you're being dramatic. They're going to accuse you of fear-mongering. Some of your friends will distance themselves from you. Some churches won't want you to speak. Some people will mock you on social media. But Jonathan, his grip tightened on my shoulders, you cannot let that stop you. You cannot let fear of man silence the voice of God. Too much is at stake. Too many people are asleep, and someone has to be willing to be the alarm clock, even if it costs them everything. Tears were streaming down my face, mixing with the sweat from the heat of the supernatural fire. I'll do it, I said, my voice shaking but determined. I don't care what it costs me. I don't care what people think. I'll sound the alarm. He smiled then, and it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. I know you will. That's why I chose you. That's why you're marked. You've learned to care more about my approval than man's approval. You've learned to value my voice above the voices of the crowd. And now I'm going to use you to wake up my bride. The fire around us began to subside, the flames lowering, the column of light from the pool fading. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east. Dawn was coming again, the third dawn I'd witnessed at this oasis, and each one had been more transformative than the last. Tomorrow, tonight actually, since it's already December 4th, you're going to go home, he said, releasing my shoulders. You're going to rest. You're going to process everything I've shown you, and then you're going to begin. You're going to sound the alarm. You're going to tell them about January 2026. You're going to give them the 30-minute challenge, and you're going to trust me with the results. What if they don't listen? I asked, the question that had been haunting me for 3 days finally coming out. What if I tell them and they ignore it? His expression became sad again, that divine sorrow I'd seen the first night returning to his eyes. Then they'll face the consequences of their choice. I can't force them to listen, Jonathan. I can only provide the warning. I can only offer the direction. I can only extend the invitation. But they have to choose to respond. They have to choose to prioritize me. They have to choose to seek my face. He began to fade, becoming translucent in the growing dawn light. But here's what I want you to remember. You're not responsible for their response. You're only responsible for your obedience. You deliver the message. You sound the alarm. You give the warning. And then you trust me with the results. Some will listen, some won't. But those who do, those who truly seek my face in January 2026, their lives will never be the same. The fire disappeared completely, leaving no trace, no ash, no burned ground, just the smooth stones and the reflecting pool and the palm trees swaying gently in the morning breeze. The sun broke over the horizon, flooding the desert with golden light, and he was gone. I collapsed beside the pool, exhausted, overwhelmed, transformed. I'd been in the presence of the living God for 3 consecutive nights, and I was not the same person who had driven out here on December 2nd. Something had broken in me. Something had shifted. I no longer cared about my reputation, my career, my comfort. I only cared about one thing, being obedient to what he'd shown me. I sat there for another hour, watching the sun climb higher, feeling the temperature rise, listening to the desert come alive with the sounds of birds and insects. And I made a decision. I decided that no matter what it cost me, no matter who rejected me, no matter how crazy people thought I was going to deliver this message. I was going to sound the alarm. I was going to tell everyone who would listen about January 2026. Listen to me. If you're still reading this, if you've made it through all 3 nights of these encounters, you are absolutely marked. You are meant to hear this message, and now you have a choice to make. You can dismiss this as the ramblings of an actor who's lost his mind. You can scroll past and go back to your comfortable Christianity. You can ignore the warning and hope everything works out fine. Or you can take this seriously. You can recognize that God is speaking. You can commit right now to making January 2026 a month unlike any other in your life, a month of seeking his face with desperation, a month of listening for his voice with intensity, a month of positioning yourself to receive the direction, wisdom, and warning he wants to give you. The choice is yours. But I'm telling you, as someone who has looked into his eyes and seen his tears, as someone who has felt his hands on my shoulders and heard the urgency in his voice, you cannot afford to ignore this. Type, "I choose to listen" in the comments if you're committing to the 30-minute daily challenge in January 2026. Because tomorrow, I'm going to give you the practical details. I'm going to tell you exactly how to do this. I'm going to give you a specific plan for those 30 minutes, and I'm going to set a deadline. January is coming. The clock is ticking, and your destiny hangs in the balance. I drove home from the desert on the morning of December 4th as the sun climbed higher in a cloudless sky, the temperature already reaching 55 degrees by 8 a.m. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the residual power of 3 consecutive nights in the presence of God. Every cell in my body felt charged, awakened, transformed. I wasn't the same Jonathan Rumi who had driven out to that oasis 3 nights ago. That man had been comfortable, cautious, concerned about his reputation. This man, the one driving home now, had been marked, commissioned, set on fire with a message that couldn't be contained. I spent the next week in a state of holy urgency. I couldn't eat normally. Food tasted like cardboard. I couldn't sleep normally. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, heard his voice, felt the weight of the message he'd given me. I tried to go about my regular life, responding to emails, taking meetings, running errands, but it all felt meaningless, trivial, like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic while an iceberg approached. On December 11th, exactly 9 days after the first encounter, I drove back to the oasis. Not because he'd told me to, but because I needed to. I needed to stand in that place again, to remember, to make sure it had all been real and not some elaborate dream or psychological break. I arrived at 2 p.m., the desert bathed in bright afternoon sunlight, the temperature a comfortable 64 degrees. The oasis looked completely ordinary in the daylight, just 7 palm trees around a natural spring-fed pool, the kind of place hikers might stumble upon and take photos before moving on. But I knew better. I knew what had happened here. I knew who had walked on these stones. I sat beside the pool for 3 hours, just remembering, processing, praying. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the blue sky and the palm fronds swaying in a gentle breeze. Birds sang in the trees. A lizard scurried across the warm stones. Everything was peaceful, normal, mundane. But I could still feel the echo of his presence, like a frequency that lingered in the air, in the stones, in the water itself. "I won't let you down," I said out loud, my voice sounding small in the vast desert silence. "I'll deliver the message. I promise." A gust of wind suddenly swept through the oasis, warm and gentle, rustling the palm fronds, creating ripples across the pool's surface. And in that moment, I felt his approval, his encouragement, his confirmation that I was on the right path. I drove home that evening with absolute clarity about what I needed to do. I needed to create this message, this 4-part testimony, and release it to everyone who would listen. I needed to give them the practical steps, the specific challenge, the urgent deadline. I needed to be the alarm clock he'd called me to be. So here we are. You've journeyed with me through 3 nights of supernatural encounters. You've seen what I've seen, heard what I've heard, felt the weight of what he's revealed. And now comes the most important part. What are you going to do about it? Let me be absolutely clear about what Jesus told me. This isn't vague, this isn't symbolic, this is specific, practical, and urgent. The 30-minute daily challenge for January 2026. Starting January 1st, 2026, and continuing through January 31st, 2026, you are to set aside 30 minutes every single day for one purpose: listening to God. Not reading your Bible, though that's important. Not worship music, though that has its place. Not prayer requests, though intercession matters. Just listening. Here's exactly how he told me to instruct you. Step 1. Eliminate every distraction. 5 minutes. Find a place where you can be completely alone. A closet, a bathroom, your car parked somewhere quiet, your backyard. It doesn't matter where, as long as you can be undisturbed for 30 minutes. Turn off your phone. Not on silent. Not on vibrate. Off. Put it in another room if you have to. Close your laptop. Turn off the TV. Remove every possible distraction. If you have young children and can't get away, wake up before they do or stay up after they're asleep. Jesus said specifically, if they say they don't have 30 minutes, they're lying to themselves. Everyone has 30 minutes. They just choose to spend it on other things. Sit in silence for the first 5 minutes. Don't pray yet. Don't talk yet. Just sit. Let your mind settle. Let the noise of the day fade. Let yourself become present, aware, open. Step 2. Ask the 3 questions. 25 minutes. Once you've settled into silence, ask God these 3 questions, out loud if possible, in your mind if you must. Question 1. What do you want to tell me? Then be silent. Wait. Listen. Don't fill the silence with your own thoughts. Don't start praying about your problems. Don't start making plans. Just listen. He might bring a scripture to mind. He might give you a picture or vision. He might speak in that still, small voice in your spirit. He might bring a person to mind. He might show you something about yourself. However he speaks, pay attention. Write down everything that comes. Don't filter it. Don't judge it. Don't dismiss it as just your imagination. Write it all down. Spend about 8 to 10 minutes on this question. Question 2. What do you want to warn me about? This is the question most people will want to skip. Nobody likes warnings. Nobody wants to hear about dangers or mistakes or wrong paths. But Jesus was emphatic about this. My people are walking into traps they could avoid if they would just listen to my warnings. Again, be silent. Wait, listen. He might warn you about a relationship, a financial decision, a health issue, a choice one of your children is about to make, a direction your church is heading, a business opportunity that looks good but isn't from him, a person who isn't who they appear to be. Write down everything he shows you, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's scary. Especially if it's scary, spend about 8-10 minutes on this question. Question 3. What do you want me to do? This is where listening becomes obedience. This is where revelation becomes action. Jesus said, hearing my voice without obeying my voice is worse than not hearing at all, because it hardens the heart. Be silent. Wait. Listen. He might tell you to have a specific conversation, to make a phone call, to write a letter, to change jobs, to move to a different city, to start something new, to end something old, to give money to someone, to fast from something, to speak up about something, to be silent about something. Whatever he tells you to do, write it down. And then, this is critical, do it. Even if it's hard, even if it's scary, even if it doesn't make sense, even if people think you're crazy. Spend about 8 to 10 minutes on this question. Step 3. Commit to obedience. Before you end your 30 minutes, make a verbal commitment to God that you will obey whatever He's shown you. Say it out loud. I will obey. I will trust you. I will do what you've told me to do. Then stand up, turn your phone back on, and return to your day. But carry what He's told you with you. Think about it. Pray about it. And most importantly, act on it. The deadline. You have until January 31st, 2026 to complete this 30-day challenge. That's it. That's your window. Jesus was clear. January 2026 is the last clear moment before the noise intensifies. After January, it will be harder to hear. Not impossible, but harder. Much harder. Today is December 2nd, 2026, as I'm recording this message. That means you have exactly 30 days until January 1st, 2026 to prepare, 30 days to clear your schedule, 30 days to make the commitment, 30 days to decide if you're serious about hearing God's voice or if you're content with comfortable Christianity. And then you have 31 days, the entire month of January, to actually do it, to show up every day, to listen, to receive, to obey. That's 61 days total from right now until the end of January 2026. 61 days that could determine the trajectory of your entire life. What if you miss a day? Jesus addressed this specifically. He said, if they miss a day, they don't give up. They don't say, well, I failed, so I might as well quit. They acknowledge it, they repent for not prioritizing me, and they start again the next day. But, and his voice became stern here, if they're consistently missing days, if they're constantly making excuses, if they're treating this like an optional spiritual exercise rather than a life or death matter, then they're proving they're not serious, and I cannot give direction to people who aren't serious about following it. What will happen if you do this? I asked Jesus this question directly during the second night. I said, what can people expect if they actually do this? If they show up every day for 30 minutes in January and truly listen? His answer was immediate. They will receive clear, specific, personal direction for their life, not vague feelings, not generic encouragement, specific direction. I will tell them things about their future they couldn't know any other way. I will warn them about dangers they can't see coming. I will reveal their calling with a clarity that removes all doubt. I will give them strategies for their business, wisdom for their family, insight into their relationships, and understanding of their purpose. But most importantly, they will learn to recognize my voice. And once they learn that, once they become sensitive to my frequency, everything changes. I've seen this in my own life since those 3 nights at the Oasis. I've been doing the 30-minute challenge every day since December 4th, preparing for January, practicing, learning to listen, and the clarity I've received has been staggering. God has shown me things about my career, my relationships, my future that I never would have known otherwise. He's warned me about opportunities that looked good but weren't from Him. He's directed me toward connections I would have missed. He's given me specific words for specific people that have transformed their lives. And if He'll do it for me, a 51-year-old single actor with no special qualifications except a willingness to listen, He'll do it for you. What will happen if you don't do this? I don't want to focus on fear, but I also can't ignore what Jesus showed me. The consequences of ignoring His voice aren't immediate, which makes them easy to dismiss. You can skip January 2026 and still go to church in February. You can ignore this challenge and still feel spiritual in March. You can dismiss this message and still post Bible verses in April. But by December 2026, the gap between those who listened and those who didn't will be undeniable. Those who sought His face in January will be navigating the challenges of 2026 with supernatural wisdom, divine protection, and clear direction. Those who didn't will be scrambling, panicking, making decision after decision based on fear and human wisdom, drifting further from their purpose with each passing month. And by December 2027, Jesus showed me that the difference will be devastating, not because He's punishing those who didn't listen, but because ignoring God's voice has natural consequences. When you ignore a warning, you walk into danger. When you ignore direction, you wander off the path. When you ignore a call, you miss your destiny. I saw people filled with regret, saying, I felt God trying to tell me something in January 2026. Why didn't I listen? Why didn't I make time? Why did I let everything else become more important than hearing His voice? Don't be one of those people. Please, I'm begging you. Don't let comfort, distraction, busyness, or fear keep you from the most important 30 minutes of your day for 31 days. The opposition you'll face. I need to warn you about something. The moment you commit to this challenge, you're going to face opposition, not from God, but from the enemy who desperately doesn't want you to hear God's voice. Suddenly, January is going to be the busiest month of your life. Unexpected things will come up. Emergencies will arise. People will need you. Your schedule will explode. You'll feel more tired than usual. You'll face more distractions than normal. This isn't coincidence. This is spiritual warfare. The enemy knows that if you learn to hear God's voice clearly, if you receive specific direction for your life, If you align yourself with divine purpose, you become dangerous to his kingdom. So he's going to throw everything at you to keep you from those 30 minutes. Expect it, prepare for it, fight through it. Jesus said, tell them that the opposition they face is actually confirmation that they're on the right track. The enemy doesn't bother attacking people who aren't a threat. If they're facing resistance, it means they're doing something that matters. My personal commitment. I'm doing this challenge with you. Starting January 1st, 2026, I'm committing to 30 minutes every single day of listening to God. I'm going to share updates, insights, and what I'm hearing throughout the month. I'm going to be transparent about the struggles, the breakthroughs, the opposition, and the victories. But more than that, I'm committing to pray for everyone who takes this challenge seriously. I'm going to pray that God opens your ears, that He removes every distraction, that He gives you the discipline to show up every day, and that He speaks to you with unmistakable clarity. What I need from you. First, I need you to make a public commitment. Type, I commit to January 2026 in the comments right now, not because I need to see it, but because you need to say it. There's power in public declaration. There's accountability in letting others know you're serious. Second, I need you to share this message. I know everyone asks you to share their videos, but this isn't about views or algorithm or building a platform. This is about sounding an alarm. This is about waking up the bride of Christ. This is about making sure that everyone who's supposed to hear this message actually hears it. Jesus said specifically, the marked ones will recognize this message. They'll feel it in their spirit. They'll know it's from me, and they'll share it because they understand the urgency. If you are marked, if you recognize this message as divine, if you feel the urgency in your spirit, then share it. Send it to your family. Post it on your social media. Text it to your friends. Email it to your church. Do whatever it takes to make sure the people in your sphere of influence have the opportunity to hear what God is saying. Third, I need you to prepare. Don't wait until January 1st to figure out where you're going to have your 30 minutes. Don't wait until January 1st to clear your schedule. Start now. Look at your January calendar. Block out 30 minutes every single day. Decide where you're going to go. Decide what time of day works best. Eliminate obstacles before they become excuses. Fourth, I need you to be honest in the comments. Tell me what you're feeling right now. Tell me what scares you about this. Tell me what excites you. Tell me what questions you have. Tell me what obstacles you're already seeing, because I want to address them. I want to help you succeed in this. I want to see you hear God's voice with clarity you've never experienced. The bigger picture. Here's what I've come to understand in the weeks since those 3 nights at the Oasis. January 2026 isn't just about individuals hearing God's voice. It's about the church, the bride of Christ, waking up. It's about a remnant rising up who are serious about their faith, who prioritize God's voice above everything else, who are willing to obey even when it's costly. Jesus is looking for a people who will listen, who will respond, who will obey. Not perfectly, none of us will do this perfectly, but sincerely, desperately, wholeheartedly. And if enough people take this seriously, if enough people commit to seeking His face in January 2026, something could shift, not just in individual lives, but in families, churches, communities, maybe even nations. But it starts with you. It starts with your decision right now to take this seriously, to make the commitment, to clear the schedule, to show up every day, to listen, to obey. A final word about the Oasis. I went back to the desert oasis one more time on December 15th, 2 weeks after the final encounter. I arrived in the late afternoon, the sun low in the sky, the temperature dropping as evening approached. I sat beside the reflecting pool, watching the palm trees sway in the breeze, remembering everything that had happened there. And as I sat there, I realized something. The oasis is a picture of what God wants to do in our lives. In the middle of the desert, in the middle of the chaos, the noise, the dryness of modern life, He wants to create an oasis, a place of refreshing, a place of clarity, a place where we can hear His voice. But we have to go there. We have to make the journey. We have to leave the highway of busyness and distraction and find that hidden place where He's waiting to meet us. Those 30 minutes every day in January, that's your oasis, that's your meeting place, that's where He's waiting to speak to you, to refresh you, to give you everything you need for what's ahead. Don't miss it. Please, don't miss it. The sun set over the desert that evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and deep red, the same colors I'd seen on that third night when Jesus had walked out of the fire. And as darkness fell and the stars began to appear, I felt a deep peace settle over me. I delivered the message. I'd sounded the alarm. I'd been obedient to what he'd called me to do. Now it was up to everyone who heard it to decide how they would respond. The choice is yours. I'm going to end this exactly where Jesus told me to end it, with both warning and hope. The warning. If you ignore this, if you're too busy or too distracted or too comfortable to seek God's face in January 2026, you will miss something you can't get back. You'll miss direction you desperately need. You'll miss warnings that could save you from disaster. You'll miss the clarity about your calling that you've been searching for, and by the end of 2026, you'll look back with regret, wishing you'd taken this seriously. The hope, if you do this, if you show up every day for 30 minutes in January 2026 and truly listen, God will speak to you with clarity you've never experienced. He'll give you specific direction for your life. He'll warn you about dangers you can't see. He'll reveal your calling. He'll give you strategies, wisdom, insight, and understanding. And by the end of 2026, you'll look back in amazement at how different your life is because you chose to listen. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. January is coming, the clock is ticking, and your destiny hangs in the balance. I'm Jonathan Rumi. I've been marked. I've been commissioned. I've delivered the message. And now I'm praying, desperately, fervently, constantly, that you'll take it seriously. Type "I'm all in the comments if you're committing to this challenge, and then share this message with everyone you know who needs to hear it. January 2026, 30 minutes a day, 3 questions, clear direction. Don't ignore God's warning. Don't miss your moment. Don't let this be the message you scrolled past and regretted for the rest of your life. The oasis is waiting, he's waiting, and time is running out.